We
are live.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Davis, and I have the huge privilege of being joined by Martin Redstone this morning. I'm really glad to see so many people joining this session. My first live webinar. Yes, a tiny bit nervous, but super excited, especially to have the man, the myth, the legend of Martin Redstone here. That makes me extra nervous. But yeah, should we do a short introduction of the both of us? I don't know that everybody knows who I am or who you are. Go for it. So my name is Alexandra. I've been working for the last 16 years or so within the talent space. For the last 4 years, I've been running my own business, focusing on consulting, scale-up organizations, building TA functions from ground up, or just making them more efficient and more sort of sustainable, but also doing the recruitment side, so ensuring that they have the right people in the right place. So that's me in a nutshell. Martin?
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. This is all Alex is doing. Her and I were having a chat about some of this, and this is all down to her, so it's all her fault. Yeah. But so lovely to be here. Great to be involved in this conversation. My name is Martin Redstone, as it says down there. I'm getting very good at doing that, just getting right.
It looks like you're pointing to a penguin there. There's a penguin on the jump.
Oh yeah, true. So what do I do? Well, I've been in the TA and recruitment space for 20 years now. I have for the last 15 years been in the world of technology around that, but for the last 9 or so years that's been really focused on AI and automation, and 7 years ago launched what was the industry's first AI and automation consultancy, specifically for recruitment and HR. And so I've been doing that for the last 7 years, but for the last, I'd say 12, 18 months, that's been really heavily focused on governance, compliance, risk management, legislation. So ultimately, the elevator pitch, the strip lines, is all about helping HR and recruitment implement AI effectively, responsibly, ethically, and legally.
Yeah. And we love that. And I mean, you've even been out there and sort of auditing vendors, which I think says a lot that you get that kind of request as well. So yeah, absolutely. You do important work.
I try to. What I'm going to do is, I think,
share our presentation that we had some issues with
before this, just seeing if we could share our presentation. So I'm just going to. I'm going to wonder why Canva doesn't have a present option, but I'm just going to share.
It has when you press share, and then you can go present or view, but it's really not intuitive at all.
Oh wow, yeah, it's changed around a bit, hasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's do it like that. Let's share my screen, and we should be able to.
Can we see it? There we go.
There we are. There we are. That's us. There we go. With our welcome. Excellent. So that's us in a nutshell. Yes. We are streaming live on YouTube, as far as I am aware. So if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat on YouTube. We should be able to see them here in our control center, but I am monitoring the YouTube feed as well. We do have some questions that were asked during registration that we'll cover at the end. Without further ado, let's
rock and roll.
Yeah.
No, so I came up with, or I asked actually Martin to do something with me, because what I've been seeing going on the Nordic market is huge literacy gap. So I decided to sort of deep dive into, is this just me or is there something in the bigger picture going on that I need to sort of focus on? And with that being said, this is not just HR or TA, this is across entire organizations. But low literacy obviously doesn't stop people from using AI, it just stops them from recognizing how they're using it. But basically, this creates blind adoption. My sort of perspective when I looked at this is, why is this happening within the TA field specifically, or HR field? So I started looking at some statistics. And first off, there is the Nordic labor market situation. Unemployment rates have been increasing throughout the last 2 years in the Nordic market. Which creates more admin, obviously, because there's going to be more candidates applying for jobs. And then you also have the applicants per job. And this is not only the unemployed people, but obviously with the introduction of AI, you see that kind of surge. Yeah. Recruiters chase efficiency, maybe over evaluation of systems. And then last but not least, you have, or one of the last pieces, you have that the TA teams actually are being cut down. Smaller teams, same targets. If you look at statistically, 54% report that they have a higher workload. And this was social talent during this year. We've seen a lot of redundancies made later parts of this year as well. So I think that those numbers are going to get bumped up a little bit more even. But I think also a key issue that we're not talking enough about is the AI strategy overall. So only 26% of Nordic CEOs are involved in the AI strategy. And this is a telltale sign, at least for me, when it comes to the AI literacy overall. And in Sweden, I'm actually super disappointed to actually share this number, but it's 15%. And that's crazy to me. But that sort of shows you probably how little TA or HR is supported. And then you also have to add into the equation, like TA or HR is often treated like a cost function and not a strategic function, which means HR probably isn't getting that much guidance and are just expected to cope. That's about it. So what happens if we can sort of go into the next slide? I think, come on, you can do it, Kamba. So what happens? Well, I like to call something called the imitation loop. So when innovation more becomes of a mirroring game. So on the one hand side, you have the people that are overworked and stressed out, chasing efficiency. And then you have on the other side, the early adopter that is like, yay, AI will be the silver bullet. Let's bite into it and just get things going. No oversight, or they might have oversight. However, the overworked person that has like zero capability or resources in that sense, might lean into somebody being an early adopter, not knowing if they've done the due diligence, for instance, for that system, but looking at, okay, this is a reputable company deciding to take on this AI recruiting system or whatever it might be. So if they do it, we might as well do it. So under pressure, people imitate. They copy what their neighbor does. So shiny AI tool, these people are doing it, we assume it must be safe, that there's a confirmation bias going on. And that's what I'm basically seeing happening right now when it comes to AI adoption, specifically within the TA field. And then you have the shadow AI aspect of it all that I've seen firsthand, and it's kind of scary. So risk is imminent, and it's already embedded in workflows. And that sort of brings me to you, Martin, on the practical side. If this is a reality, low literacy, high pressure, shadow AI, and weak oversight, what do we actually do?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let me pop onto my slide. Now, this is probably the busiest, messiest slide I have ever created in my life. What I didn't want to do is bore you to death with slides upon slides upon slides of PowerPoint. I'm going to talk you through what I call my governance stack, which is a bit like a burger, because who doesn't like a burger? But look, thanks, Alex. What you just described, especially the point around vendors promising the world and leadership in our space kind of really worried about the risks. That's exactly where, and dare I say it, you know, sometimes this is a good thing, sometimes this isn't. That's exactly where Brussels has stepped in. So what I'm going to do for the next kind of several minutes is I'm going to walk through the regulation itself, not the kind of boring legal text that's in several hundred pages of PDF, but what it actually means for daily operations in HR and TA. And that's kind of the bit at the top. Second, actually, the next bit I'm going to share some breaking news, literally from this week, about a legislative package that I mentioned right at the top there called the Digital Omnibus. Going to fundamentally change some things around the EU AI Act. Okay, so let's start with a mindset shift. It's probably the best place to start. So most HR leaders that I talk to, they still think about things like the EU AI Act as tech regulation. They think it's a problem for kind of the big tech people, Microsoft, Google, Meta, or even their CTOs in their companies and their IT directors. And that's a really dangerous misconception. So for HR and talent acquisition, you need to view the EU AI Act as like the consumer protection law for your employees and candidates. Just as you wouldn't buy a car without seatbelts because it's unsafe. Actually, seatbelts come from the Nordic, so there we go. You can no longer buy recruitment software or HR tech software that hasn't been crash tested for bias. Love an analogy. Anyone that knows me knows I love an analogy. So that's my main analogy of the day. So when you think about the AI Act, it's built on like a risk framework ultimately, and it doesn't ban AI. It regulates how you use it. And for everyone on this call, for anyone in our industry, under Annex 3 of the Act, every significant use case in HR, in TA and recruitment is classified as high risk.
Yes.
And if you're using AI to pass CVs, high risk. Using it to rank candidates, high risk. Psychometric testing, high risk. On the HR side, performance management, deciding on promotions, high risk. And this classification means that you're walking into quite a heavy compliance burden. You're looking at strict requirements on data quality, human oversight, record keeping, accuracy, and crucially, and this is the bit that I don't think many people have really got their heads around, the employer, you, the people that are, hopefully listening in, they're classed as the deployer in legal terms. And so that means that they're on the hook if things go wrong, not just the vendor. And that's one of the big critical mistakes I'm hearing is people say, oh, it's fine. Our vendor has said that they're compliant.
Yeah. Or it's not our responsibility. Like,
kind of like, that's down to the vendor. Yeah. And it's not, it's shared responsibility.
No. But you said something really interesting, or one of your articles that you wrote, and I think there's a shift going on, and I think that's what you're getting at. Like, the TA and HR professionals need to look at themselves as the leaders of the people data systems instead. And that shift, I don't know how far we've come, but that is a huge shift that needs to happen sooner rather than later.
And the way that I see it is, even if we remove the concept of just building AI for HR, in every organization there is now a some kind of transformation program that has got something to do with AI. It might not be HR specific, it might be contact center, it might be finance, it might be whatever. But, and this is the bit that I talk about quite a lot, is every AI transformation program that's going on impacts people in some way.
Exactly.
And so our people leadership, our HR leadership need to be involved in any AI transformation, because without them, the people impact probably won't be managed properly. And we've seen it already. We've seen companies rushing into reduction in force, due to AI. We saw it with Klarna over the last 12 months, where they made a huge mistake, had to rehire people. We see it with lots of organizations where people impact isn't being taken into consideration properly. So yes, so absolutely, HR need to be involved in any AI transformation. But specifically, I think the challenge we have is that even if you're in an organization where most of their AI transformation is looked at from an efficiency perspective or cost cutting, whatever, most of the stuff that happens isn't classed as high risk. When you look at the EU AI Act, the moment it touches HR, it is.
It is, yeah.
And I think that's where the breakdown in a lot of organizations is happening when it comes to governance and compliance and legislation. Is there's no bridge between kind of HR and the rest of the company when it comes to the risks involved in AI. So that's another piece to think about.
And it's not seen as the strategic partner in that sense.
No, it's not. It's not seen as a strategic partner, and that will change when an organisation gets a 35 million euro fine because they haven't done something properly.
Then it's too late. Everyone's fired.
And that is it. That's the headline. Ultimately, is the high risk stuff when it comes to the Act. That's the stuff that's going to end up being litigated first. The case law that we're going to see in the EU AI Act, the first one that comes out, going to be HR. Absolutely going to be anything high risk, and high risk isn't just HR. It's anything that creates kind of life-changing decisions. So finance, health, employment, those kind of things. But yeah, that's where we're going to see the litigation first. So we're not going to see it on the stuff that doesn't impact people. So and we're already seeing that in the US. We all know about kind of the Mobley Workday stuff. We all know about Sirius XM, iSIMS. It's all to do with decisions that AI is making. So what happens in the US tends to be reflected elsewhere when it comes to litigation.
And I mean it's fantastic that they take the heat to start off with, because they have a much more unregulated market than we have in the EU or in the Nordics specifically. And in the Nordics, I mean, we tend to be a bit risk averse, but I also think that that's in part one of our challenges when it comes to the Nordics. That you need to get out of your comfort zone and embrace these changes to a much further extent than people actually are doing today. But take us through all of this. We're getting sort of stuck into really interesting stuff. But
Look, the point of this webinar, just to clarify, is to go over this stuff. But Alex and I are going to be having lots of conversations and chats because we both thoroughly geek out over this stuff. But like I said, the chat is open. So any questions, any points, ask away. And there'll be plenty of opportunity at the end to also kind of ask questions as well. So look, that's the EU AI Act, but it gets really interesting now. And Alex, have you got the chats up as well so you can see the questions?
No, but nobody's whispering backstage, as it says.
No, if you go to the public chat, you'll be able to see the stuff coming in from.
Okay.
Hopefully you can see that. We've just had one come in. So look, let me just take you through some news that's going to break either today or tomorrow. Not sure about it 100%, but just to give you a bit of a heads up, some new legislative package from the EU called the Digital Omnibus. Like I said, it hasn't hit the press yet because it's not been officially announced. So you're getting the inside track here. This, and it will either be announced today or tomorrow. So this package is set to introduce to both the AI Act and GDPR things that directly impact the governance roadmap of organizations. So the headline news is a timeline shift. So originally, for high risk elements of the EU AI Act, we were looking at a compliance deadline of August the 2nd, 2026, so less than 12 months.
Yeah.
The omnibus package is expected to introduce a stop the clock mechanism. So it means that the new effective date for getting yourself in order is going to be a year afterwards, August 2027.
Okay.
So before anyone breathes a sigh of relief and says, put that back in the too hard, we'll wait kind of basket, don't. This 1-year extension isn't a get out of jail free card. It is a grace period, and it's designed to let you fix your governance, because the EU have realized that people just aren't doing anything that they need to do when it comes to this. So they're saying, look, you've got 12 months more. We're not going to be extending it any further. If you have, you mentioned it earlier, Alex, shadow AI in your teams right now, recruiters using their own ChatGPT accounts to write feedback, or legacy ATS plugins that no one's vetted. This is it. You've got a window to audit them without the panic that you've got less than a year to do it. But come August 2027, the gloves are off. The EU are bulking up their enforcement teams. They are hiring like crazy. They're changing around some things as well. Another key change in the omnibus package covers AI literacy. There was a fairly strict text in the original act for to oblige companies to ensure AI competence across anybody that is involved with AI. And the new proposal is kind of softening this to an obligation to encourage education and foster literacy rather than making it a clear specific. But like I said, they're beefing up enforcement. They're centralizing a lot of enforcement. So yeah, come August 2027, the gloves are absolutely off. But look, that literacy thing is quite interesting.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
A lot of organizations were going, oh, and that was actually a requirement that came in February. It was live and legal in February this year, where organizations had to start providing literacy training to anyone who is touching any AI system. But look, legally you might be off the hook on that, but think about it quite strategically. And this is the bit that I really need people to think about. If you put another great analogy, love an analogy. If you
go on
behind the wheel of a Ferrari level AI tool without teaching them how to drive, you're going to crash. So think of it like that. Literacy, whilst it's not a legality anymore, for me it remains a commercial necessity. So just think of it like that. Now, take a break there. Take a breath. Let's have a look. So we've got some questions coming in, haven't we?
I haven't really. I'm not getting the access to the chat for some reason.
Can you see?
I'm not accessing like the.
So if you go into the chat, studio chat, and can you see at the top it says public chat? If you go back into the,
I see studio chat, and then I click on that, and it just says whisper backstage.
Oh, okay. So why haven't you got access to?
I don't know. And I tried to find it on YouTube, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, maybe that means you're not important enough.
Oh, damn.
I'm just wondering if I've got a way of upgrading you here. Probably not.
Oh well, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Anyway, let me run through a couple of these questions while we kind of take a break. So we've got one from, and I'm not going to read out these names because I don't know who these people are, because it's just usernames. We've got one which says, which reporting obligations do employers have considering high risk classification? Does it depend on the size of the organization? Yeah, great question. Yes and no. I think ultimately it comes down to best practice when it comes to the size of the organization. I think anybody in the high risk area has certain reporting obligations, depends whether you're a vendor, whether a user. We have Annex 4 documentation. Ultimately, and this is the advice that I give to all of my clients, just as a best place to start, is if an auditor comes in and says, give me one document that that gives me the information on who is the responsible person, when you last audited, a list of all of your models, so any kind of AI solution that's running and the model behind it, and when they were last bias audited. So those are kind of the four key pieces of documentation that you need to start with. And it goes out from there, absolutely. And what I'll do on the follow-up email is I'll share kind of a bit of a framework around that. But those are the four kind of places that I tell people to start. Who is responsible? Do we have a list of all of the models being used? Do we have an understanding of when they were last biased, when they were last bias audited? Ultimately, if you get your head around that, that's a good starting point. So that's kind of the first point. And originally, it was also around tracking when everyone has been trained from a literacy perspective, but that's not a legal requirement. Again, best practice requirement.
You see that becoming a requirement moving forward, because I know that you have a close relationship to the legislator.
Yeah, so the literacy was a legal requirement, but we're expecting it to be removed in the package that's announced today.
Okay.
So I'd say it's best working practice now, but no longer a legal requirement.
You don't think it will pop up as a legal requirement moving forward? No.
I think it's such a massive burden on organisations that
it is.
So there was no detail around exactly who needed to be trained, which was a bigger challenge as well. Got a second question. Do you see the digital omnibus / GDPR governance roadmap eventually leading to actual audits or certifications for AI-driven recruitment tools, similar to how automotive has structured audits for CS, which I presume is customer service? Yeah, good question. I do see audits happening, especially on the high risk areas, and I think that's the point really. I do know that the EU AI office has been struggling to hire enforcement staff, but they are absolutely keen on enforcement, which for me means audit first. So I would expect and plan for an audit. I don't know what that regime is going to look like post potentially August 2027, but we were expecting some detailed guidance coming out the beginning of next year, but again, that may be delayed because of the digital omnibus. Yeah. So let me. Cybersecurity. Sorry, of course, my brain isn't cybersecurity. Yeah. Look, the whole point of the digital omnibus is to bring everything together in a bit more of a succinct way. But yes, I do expect audits now I understand where you're coming from a certification perspective. Yes, as well. So each country in the EU is going to have a list of kind of organizations that help prepare people, help audit people. So I'm not sure whether there's going to be a specific certification, like the Cyber Essentials or anything like that. But I do expect an enforcement regime to start happening. And there are definitely people out there, vendors, who are starting to put on their website, we are compliant to the EU AI Act. I don't know, why they can tick that box, because there is no kind of audit regime happening right now. But I think people are just making a best guess at it. And again, something to look out for when a vendor says they are compliant to the EU AI Act.
It's a great buzzword. I mean, people love it.
but it'll mean self-certifying.
Yeah.
Because there's no third-party certifications on that right now. Cool. So, okay, so this kind of answers the first question around obligations, around high-risk classifications. So now that we're getting a picture of what the new timeline looks like, let's talk about the kind of big three risks that keep people like me awake at night. Anyway, at night. So it's what I call the big three: bias, transparency, explainability.
Yes.
Bias, we know the problem. You know, AI models, they're trained on historic data, and that tends to replicate historical hiring prejudice. So, you know, if you've hired mostly men for 10 years, the algorithm learns that male equals good. And we saw that happen. You know, the most famous case was Amazon. You know, whilst that was like, you know, almost 10 years ago now, and it was fixed, you know, the lesson stays, you know.
Exactly.
The algorithm had learned that even the word woman was negative. So somebody who had on their resume women's football team, that was a negative against hiring for software developers. So we have to be aware that hiring algorithms tend to be backward facing. And so we have this kind of catch-22 problem, you know, to test that if your AI is biased against a specific ethnicity, you need data on that ethnicity.
Exactly.
However, GDPR generally prohibits you from processing that sensitive data. So, and so you literally sometimes can't fix what you can't. You can't fix what you can't measure. So if you're not collecting that data, you have to start faking data, etc., etc. But the digital omnibus, the new kind of stuff that's coming in this week, that's going to help solve that. So we're expecting a new lawful basis under GDPR. So we know about some of the kind of more lawful bases around reasons why you can keep data. We're actually going to see hopefully a new lawful basis specifically for bias detection and correction. So we're able to capture that data now in a legal way, as long as we're only using it for bias detection and correction.
Which is fantastic, finally.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I just saw reading another question that came in. I'll cover that off a little bit later. So for me, it's going to be a complete game changer. And what it means, you know, HR pros, TA pros, or the vendors, they're likely going to be allowed to process sensitive category data like ethnicity, age, etc., solely for the purpose of auditing the algorithm for bias. But you have to make sure strict safeguards are going to be in place. So yeah, so it's going to remove one of the biggest kind of excuses that vendors have for not testing their tools. The only other way of doing it is synthetic data, but that concerns me slightly as well. Exactly. Second risk that keeps me up at night, transparency, and this is kind of the deep fake rule that we're going to see happening. So the candidate experience risk under Article 50, sorry, I had it written down there, of the AI Act. It's too many to remember. Transparency is completely non-negotiable. So again, another thing to add to your list. The rule is simple. You need to inform candidates, employees, that they're interacting with an AI system. Interact with a chatbot for your initial interview. Declare that it's a chatbot. Video interview tool that analyzes facial expression. Declare that. But it goes deeper because the AI Act mandates watermarking and disclosure for AI-generated content. So this is the deepfake clause. So if you're using generative AI to create personalized outreach emails, video avatars for recruitment marketing, that content must be machine readable as artificial. You can't trick a candidate into thinking a human wrote a personal note if a machine did it. Now, the omnibus, the update offers a bit of a breather here too. So we're expecting again a 1 year grace period on these kind of watermarks, because I don't think anyone's got their head around this either. Again, shifting that effective date to kind of August 2027. But again, my advice, start labeling your AI content now. It builds trust. And just to give you an example, I'm asked to give presentations all over the place. I've never been very good at designing presentations. You can see by my horrific slide here. You know, I was kicked out of my art class in grade 9. I'm not a designer. So I use design tools, AI design tools to do it.
Yeah.
And actually, people like the fact that when I start a presentation that's been designed using AI, I put it on the title slide. I say, this has been designed with the help of an AI assistant, you know, and it's open, it's transparent. It means that I'm not trying to pretend that I can do something that I can't do. There's no reason to be shying away from it. Everybody's using it, so let's just open it up and tell people. So yeah, but that goes one step further in the Act. You need to be doing that on an enterprise scale. You know, if you're sending out AI generated offer letters, you name it, have to market say it's AI generated. Something that not many people realize, but again, because not many people realize it, we're getting a year to breathe around it and get it done.
Breathe.
Finally, the final of those top 3 that keep me up at night: explainability. Or as I call it, the computer
huge one
problem. Huge one. And probably I'd say the most important for the legal is explainability. So Article 86 gives affected persons a right to explanation. So what that means, imagine this scenario: candidate applies for a senior role, an automated system ranks them as kind of tier C and auto rejects them. They write to you and they ask, why was I rejected?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. and it's no good saying, due to the high volume of applications, we can't give you an explanation. You know, we can't even say, well, you know what, the algorithm gave you a 4 out of 10. You can't say it's proprietary, it's a black box, we don't know how it works. Can't say any of that. You must be able to explain the principal factors that led to that decision. Was it their tenure at their previous employer? Was it their lack of specific keywords? Was it a gap in their employment? And more importantly, if your vendor cannot provide this level of explainability, you are the one that is liable for breaching the candidate's rights, not your vendor. You're facing the fine. That's why explainability is the single most important question you need to answer in the next RFP.
Exactly.
That's a really interesting one. It's a really, really interesting one. And that's why it has to be in a natural language way as well. It can't just be something really complex and technical. It's also why things like large language model screening doesn't work, because nobody actually understands how large language models work from a neural network perspective. So there's a lot involved in transparency. It's probably the key one. Explainability, the key.
But would you think that that was going to be reinforced, like regardless if you have an AI in place or not? So do you think that's going to be reinforced in organizations regardless, that there's going to be that kind of transparency towards candidates?
Well, it's a good question. We're talking about AI here, but
yeah, look, exactly.
I just think that, you know, if you're ultimately, you know, there are a lot of organizations now that do provide explainability around every decision. You know, but from an AI perspective, it's a non-negotiable. You know,
exactly.
There's regulation over here in the UK, which is even worse than that, even deeper than that. You know, rights to appeal, rights to review, from an algorithm perspective. But you know, from a EU AI Act, as long as we can provide them with a natural language explainability piece, we've covered ourselves. Candidates may not be happy. But we have absolutely and utterly covered ourselves legally.
Because that is something that you know is very reoccurring, that candidates don't feel as if anything is explained really when it comes to candidate feedback. So I think that this is going to be a huge shift for the space overall. That, you know, and even though you say we don't have AI, I don't think that excuse is going to be, you know, sort of swallowed well, so to speak.
No, not at all. And that's where I think that's where the kind of potential litigation,
yeah, exactly,
is around the fact that you can't provide an explanation on this.
And I mean, in Sweden we have the diskrimineringsombudsman, so that's definitely something that I think we'll see a lot more of.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Did you have any questions?
There's one more that came through, which is, how can professionals from regulated industries like automotive, cybersecurity, safety contribute to shaping future governance standards for AI and recruitment? So what we're saying there, I presume, is, look, you know, I've got experience of doing this in one industry. How can I help do this in recruitment? It's a good question. First of all, I would say, you know, whilst we understand kind of impacts across regulated industries, it's really important that you have a nuance of, you know, of recruitment and HR to start with, which you may have. I don't know who this person is, so that's always a good start. Is, you know, if you are wanting to be involved in kind of the wider governance conversations in an industry, it's really good. Most jurisdictions or legal jurisdictions, you know, when they are building new regulation, they go out with consultations and they ask people to get involved in those consultations. It's usually a public call for contribution. So it's about keeping a track of what's going on the legislation perspective. And typically there's a criteria for getting involved in those consultations. It could be, you know, we need people who are professionals in this industry. We need people who've got experience in this or that. Or it could just be a general call for consultation and participation. That's the initial point of entry that anybody tends to have. When it comes to that, the only other piece that I can suggest, and again, it all depends on what your country's legislative process looks like. Obviously, being in the Nordics, you're very much at the behest of the EU. Obviously, I'm here in the UK, and we have Brexit to, you know, Brexit with that anyway. But yeah, it starts with, you know, keeping close tracking on requests for consultation. If there's an opportunity to be involved in any policy building organisations, absolutely. What tends to happen is, if there is a professional association, that tends to be a good route as well. So if there's a professional HR association in your country, they tend to be the ones that represent the profession to government and the legislative process. So get involved there as well. Those tend to be the best points of entry. As one person by yourself, it's very difficult. If you belong to something that's bigger than the one, then that's the best kind of point of entry, in my opinion. And it's, for me, that was my starting point. You know, I've now, you know, over years kind of built up great relationships with people in, you know, Brussels, with people in London, where I you know, where I am called upon, and I can, you know, get time with them. But that's taken years of networking, of pushing forward, of you know, and also of generating research, white papers, things that are picked up. So that you take this very seriously. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. It's not a kind of easy answer or a one size fits all answer, but I would say get involved in your professional associations to start with. Excellent. Look, you know, while we're kind of waiting for any more questions to come in, I want to go back to this kind of 3-layer stack that I've had on the screen the whole time, because this is this is the way that I think that you need to think about your responsibility. So I mentioned the EU framework. This is what we've just discussed. That's right at the top. High risk classifications for recruitment and HR, prohibited practices, emotional recognition in the workplace. That's been effectively banned ultimately. Shifting timelines for the omnibus update. This is the ceiling. This is the top. It sets the hard limits. And at the bottom, in that pink kind of piece, we've got national enforcement, and this is the foundation. It's specific to where we are. So the AI Act doesn't replace GDPR. It sits on top of it. And in the Nordics, this enforcement will likely be led by existing kind of data protection authorities. I mentioned a couple of them there. I'm not going to even pronounce.
It's okay.
IMY in Sweden. I'm not going to try and pronounce that and make a fool out of myself. For Norway and Denmark. And remember, penalties stack. So you could theoretically face a fine under the AI Act for a non-compliant tool, and a fine under GDPR for data processing behind it as well. So double whammy can happen there. Now, in the middle, that's the responsibility gap. That's where you sit. That's where a recruiter, an HR professional, a leader sits. That's the operational layer. So this is where you need to conduct fundamental right impact assessments. This is where you ensure your human oversight. Human in the loop actually has the authority to say no to the machine. Really important point as well. This is where you execute vendor vetting. This is where you make sure that you've got your transparency in place for candidates. This is the gap between everything. Now, I know it sounds like a lot. Audit, policy, impact assessments, mountains of paperwork and admin that we just don't want to do. And it doesn't have to be. The clients that I work with, they don't try and boil the ocean. They don't try and do everything. They follow quite a simple 3-step playbook: audit, policy, procure. So audit, find everything to do with AI. Where are you using AI? Both mandated, non-mandated, shadow AI that your team might already be using. Then set the rules. Set the policy for acceptable use of AI. Set your policy for transparency. Set your candidate use of AI guidance. Set the rules of the road for human oversight, and then change the way that you buy your software so that you never bring a black box into your business again. So audit, policy, procure. And I actually have a codified approach that I provide in a document as well, and I'll send out a link to the people that registered after this as well, so that they can have a look at what that kind of month 1 to month 12 looks like in preparation for the AI Act. Takes a lot of the complexity and turns it into a project plan. That's the regulatory landscape. It's shifting. It's high stakes, but with this new delay that's coming out, it's going to be quite manageable. But you still have to start now. Hand back to you, Alex. What are you seeing on the ground with this?
No, but I actually have been reading up about like the human in the loop decisions. And I'm a bit concerned, to be very honest, and it's something that I want to talk to you a little bit about, because the studies actually show that even though human in the loop is involved, you tend to lean towards the decision that the AI recommends. And that's in 90% of the times, even though they knew that the decisions or the recommendations provided were of lower quality or biased overall, they sort of bought into that recommendation anyway. And they obviously had the implicit association tests that improved those numbers by approximately 13%, but that's still not enough. and they also talked about like the AI literacy obviously having a huge impact in whether or not those decisions continue to be aligned with the AI recommendations. So what are your thoughts around this? Have you sort of encountered that kind of same deviant behavior, so to speak, even though you have human oversight?
Yeah, deviant. It's a good question. So look, I've seen those reports as well. There's a study released recently about it. It's really interesting because we've got legislation here in the UK, and actually it is kind of reflected in the AI Act, which is that any human review of a automated decision needs to be done by a human who is reasonably qualified and experienced. So what that means is that if it's a recruitment decision, you can't ask your brand new recruiter who's never done anything like this in their lives to review that decision. It needs to be a reasonably experienced and knowledgeable person, kind of mid to senior level recruiter. Every decision again also needs to be tracked. So why did I have to make this decision? What was the decision that I made, and why did I make that decision? And you're quite right. AI literacy plays a big part of this, because one of the and this is why, and we can go into a very long conversation around AI literacy. I don't see AI literacy just as can you prompt, because you can be a brilliant prompter, but you can be a dangerous prompter. And what I mean by dangerous is, first of all, the whole kind of garbage in, garbage out principle we talked about, kind of previously biased data, but also being able to satisfactorily assess the output of AI. We know that AI, A, can be biased because it can just reflect biased data, but B, large language models have a hallucination index in there, and we know that they make things up. So we need to bear that in mind when we are doing the human in the loop piece, but we do need to record every time we are having to make a decision. Why am I having to make this decision? What was the decision that I made, and why did I make that decision? So so tracking and making sure it's done with somebody who's of a relevant level of experience to make that decision as well.
No, it's really interesting and challenging piece, to say the least.
Because all of this is.
Exactly.
but it's not something that can be ignored.
Yeah, but it forces sort of TA into a more data-driven role that they ever have had before. So it is a huge shift, and I don't think that this is anything that is taught today whatsoever. So it's going to have that huge impact, and I would like to see that this continues to sit with like TA professionals or HR. I don't want to see it moved into IT in that sense, or like the tech department. That's my 2 cents, but I don't know.
I agree. I think if we don't get it and our hands on it, then it probably will get moved away from us. But I actually think the future of TA being not only kind of that strategic function that helps people understand what resource they have for which role or which task, but also the people that oversee the algorithms as well. I think that's going to be really important. There's a couple more questions that I wanted to cover off in the last kind of 5 minutes that we've got. The first question was, how do you assess the vendors and view them from a jurisdictional, I think that's what that says, and geographic when it comes to data storage. Same way that you do with GDPR. We still have GDPR rules, can't move data out of the EU, unless for certain reasons, or you've got certain agreements in place, etc. So, when we look at kind of data storage, it's exactly the same as GDPR. What is your perspective on how use of AI can be viewed from both candidates in recruitment, but also employees that can think of being controlled by AI, and how is that data used afterwards? I think we've covered that off. Transparency. This is all high risk when it comes to the AI Act. So if you're covering yourself off from that perspective, absolutely. And data, again, we've discussed that, but transparency and also GDPR principles as well. When onboarding AI technology, are organizations thinking about the impact to those that they want to recruit? Impact over intention, and ease of the process is completely forgotten when I see what job seekers are saying. Yeah, 100%. I get this. This is the whole AI is just rejecting people and not thinking about candidate experience and what have you. I think a lot of the time AI isn't automating the rejection. Most of the time it's surfacing a ranking of candidates or a scoring of candidates and allowing the recruiter to do that. But we still can't forget about candidate experience. I always pose the devil's advocate question, which is, would you as a candidate prefer to be rejected, or would you prefer to be ghosted? So Sophie's choice. It's a terrible question to ask.
But it's a good one. I like it.
Yeah. But it's those kind of questions we need to think about when we talk about the candidate experience. Put yourself in the shoes of the candidate, because most of the time, it will be us at the end of that process at some point. Many suppliers are offering tools where AI evaluates, filters, and shortlists candidates. I'm interested in your view on how appropriate and compliant that use case is. That is a whole show. It depends. It can be, it's high risk according to the Act. So as long as you're following, the rules and the regulation, then you're compliant. How appropriate is it? I think it all depends on the organization, the volume, the type of role that you're recruiting for. What I will say is that there's lots of different types of AI out there. We've got a lot of new vendors that are just wrapping around large language models. That's not appropriate for discriminative tooling. Generative AI is not discriminative. It's like having a creative writer sitting in a judge's seat in a court of law. They don't work together. So you have to understand the technology. You have to ask the important questions. Just had a question come through. Well, first of all, point, I prefer someone read the application. We can do, although we're seeing kind of 150% increase across the board in applications. I don't think recruiters can do that from a capacity perspective. So we do need help, but we need the right help. And we need, and you're right, this person's just said, how inclusive is it? That's absolutely one of the key questions you need to ask from a vendor perspective. We need to know how they're assessing inclusivity, how they're reducing bias, how they're auditing for that bias, as we mentioned earlier.
And the repeatability of the candidate lists. That's something that I ask a lot of vendors, and I'm just like, so how, if I put in a search today and I'm looking for, I don't know, a software developer, will I have the same list and the same ranked candidates when I do it tomorrow as I had today?
Absolutely.
And a lot of them ghost me after that, after these questions.
Absolutely, because vendors aren't checking that themselves. So I did I did some research on large language models for screening. Just using off-the-shelf tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok. And there was on a daily basis, there was a plus minus 2.5 place rank change every day. But the thing is that with AI, you probably can't stop rank change, or you can get as close to perfection as possible. But again, you have to be able to explain it. You have to be able to understand it and set the limits of what's appropriate and acceptable in your organization, and audit it against it as well. But vendors, a lot of vendors, if you ask about rank shifting and rank drift, they'll go silent. They don't understand it, which is scary. We've reached the end of our hour. Has that gone quick?
We have. It went super quick.
I just realised what the time is. Absolutely what the time is. We don't have any other questions that have come in, which is absolutely fine. Alex, where can people find you if they want to contact you?
LinkedIn is the easiest way to contact me. So how do I do that since I don't have the chat?
Let me put it in the chat for you.
Yeah, so feel free to reach out.
Is Alex's LinkedIn. Excellent. And same with me. He says, just really quickly typing his one because I had yours and I could copy and paste it, but I didn't put mine in there. LinkedIn.
And also, like Martin has some, while we were doing that, he has some excellent resources on his website. So check them out.
We'll share those in the follow-up email so that we've got access to them, especially the government.
They've helped me a lot. So yeah. And this session, I hope you got some valuable information out. For me, it's more about empowerment and enablement so that TEA professionals and HR professionals become more comfortable in all of this because it's big. So yeah, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Alex, thank you so much for
thank you
getting this organized. And yeah, really enjoyed this conversation. And maybe we'll do another one at some point soon. That'd be great.
Who knows? Let us know.
Well, thank you, everyone. Any more questions, feel free to reach out to us directly. Have a great rest of the day wherever you are.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.